Because the camera is focusing towards this side, I request you let them say here, you guys can move a little bit this side. So that at least we are facing towards people if they have any questions after, because the panelists are sitting here. Fine. So, good morning, everyone. This is the second, what you call that, thought-provoking or back and forth kind of a situation in a very synchronous way, where it's not like you deliver a session where you ask question to panelists and panelists will even think about it. It's very engaging session. We kept two panel discussion. One was yesterday that was moderated by Ravi, and other is here, which will talk about the green transition and policy, and we have expert from academia and from industry. So, without delay, first I'll invite the guest and then our internal expert, you. So, Professor Monica Singhania, I invite you to please occupy a seat, and I'll give a formal introduction about her. That she is a full professor in Finance Department, Faculty of Management Studies, Delhi University, and being as a person from finance, we kind of moved to the intersection of finance and sustainability, tax, and these were her expertise. Thank you, ma'am, so much. Now I invite Mr. Nekkanti, please come. And he is the CEO and MD of Nekkanti Seafoods. And so one thing which is essentially very unique about their organization, what they are practicing, they have all the global certificate, which essentially claims them to, work in the sustainable environment. What I mean by sustainable environment, if you recall yesterday's discussion, the planet, people, and profit, and they try to keep people at the core of their operations. They engage with the local community, and also try to maintain whatever the seafood's negative externality in a way that the environment should not be damaged. Thank you so much, Mr. Niket. Now, finally, internal expert, Professor Vijaya Bhaskar Marisetty. So he has as many as you can say from the military point of view, decorated professor who is a chair professor, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. He has a PhD from Monash, Australia. He had been faculty in Bangalore and RMIT, Australia. And thank you so much for joining us. So the modality is such that I'll give 6 and 7 minutes to each one of them to speak about or what in this topic, which is on section. It's formally put those topic and then we go ahead. So it's on the public policy for just green transition. The three aspects of carbon pricing, one is the fiscal trade policy and the social inclusion. And you can mix up or you can choose any of the topic and then you speak for 6 and 7 minutes. And then we open the floor for the question. And then last time again, if we have time, we'll ask for the conclusion or I will do the answer. Okay. So what do you have first? Like yeah. Oh, sorry.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure and privilege to be invited to this international conclave on green economy. Sustainability is very close to my heart and has been the focus of all my research in last 10 years. And when we started 10 years ago, it wasn't the rage which it is today. So one never knows what seems small kind of grows up. So talking about today's theme, public policy for just transition, there are several dimensions to it. First of all, the term just transition is more apt as compared to green transition because the just transition focuses on the fair kind of treatment to all players while we are in the process of this transition. Especially, you would like to realize that those who have contributed the least towards climate damage are the ones which get impacted the most. So the critical question is, what is the world doing about them? And in that sense, just transition and the whole policy and frameworks around that are very, very important. If we talk about coal transition, then we are seeing coal transition in India. Those of you who were there in yesterday's talk of the Discom, increasingly they see a demand plateauing, which is primarily because of the solar interventions. So the coal-based economy is changing, and the critical question in that sense is, what are we doing with respect to reskilling of the coal sector, employees, people who are workers who are working in the coal sector? How do we provide them the requisite skill set so that they can transition into livelihoods as the larger transition of the economy happens? The third dimension is green jobs. What are we doing in terms of employment generation with respect to green jobs? So when we talk about the green economy, there has to be the whole idea of providing green jobs. More and more people are working in renewable generation of energy, waste management practices, water related dimensions. At the more surface level, if we talk about individuals, organizations, and economies, the three frontal dimensions of sustainability which touch all of us include energy, water, and waste. The most tangible dimensions. So first, we need to acknowledge and take actions regarding these three, and then only the other dimensions of sustainability, when one gets more aware, when one is more sensitized, then the other dynamics comes into play. Then I would like to touch upon the National Green Hydrogen Mission in India, wherein the ambition is to make India, a hub, a global hub of green production, and thereafter the business emanating therefrom. And when we say, this about this mission, the idea is to generate green hydrogen through renewable sources. So these are some of the dimensions, and when we reflect back, the earliest interventions towards green transition and just transition included, National Solar Alliance, the National Solar Mission, which was the India's formal push towards manufacturing of solar panels, which even today, if you look at the costing of a solar panel, China is miles ahead, in the sense that the per unit cost of producing a solar panel in India is significantly higher even today. I'm talking of 2026 as compared to what it is in China. And it is important, how do we become a manufacturing hub in a real sense and in the entire value chain, unless we have the cost parity, because ultimately, globally, including India, people are price sensitive. So National Solar Mission provided that earlier breakthrough of generating the right kind of awareness towards solarization of Indian economy. Then the government did its part in terms of production-linked incentives, and these production-linked incentives have played a tremendous role in setting up the requisite manufacturing ecosystem in India. Because at the end of the day, the India story is a services-led story, and if we are really to become the global manufacturing hub as promised by the Make in India, Stand Up India, Startup India, the Digital India programs. If we are to become that, then we need end-to-end hand-holding, government-led transformation, and tremendous, policy intervention at the right levels in order to really have a value chain which is globally competitive.
Thanks a lot, Professor Monica. Before I move to, I have kept strategically yesterday also a person industry in the center and here also. Before I go to you, I'll just add one point on what man said is the cost parity. Along with that, I'll also add one more point, which is the climate part. When you are actually industry, government are making policies based on such kind of a recommendation. Both side, how are you dealing with it?
So, thank you everyone for the opportunity. So I represent Nekkanti Seafoods or the seafood sector or in large. Just to give a background of what seafood industry in India is, we are about 8.7 billion in total exports. India is the largest exporter to the US. In terms of 40% of India's exports go to the US and Europe as well. So last 2 days we had a big conference here in Vizag where Mr. Piyush Goyal, Food Processing Minister, and the Minister of Fisheries from the central government, along with the Civil Aviation Minister, and CM was also there, acknowledging what the seafood industry is doing for the country. In the last 12 years, the industry has doubled in terms of size. And Prime Minister has given this the utmost importance in terms of the newer schemes, which we have never had for the last 40 years. So just to set the basis of what the seafood industry from India, and it's upcoming and we expect it to be a $50 billion industry is the target by 2035, which is a very aggressive number. So now coming to the sustainability part, so as ma'am was mentioning, energy and water, these are the two things where we are heavy guzzlers as an industry. Having said that, the social impact, we have about 3 crore direct employees, the industry employees in terms of just not the employees, majority of them are small entrepreneurs. So now once we talk about sustainability angle in an industry like us, it is all dependent on the financial aspect of things. So how European Union or the American market gives you the premium to be a sustainable, socially compliant source is one of the major factors. 10 years back, I think ma'am touched upon it, when she started the research, it's not a very important thing, same thing for our industry. 10 years back when 2012, 2013, let's say all our energy is green energy, nobody even cared about it. But today it has become a norm. So just to give what the impact on industry is, just from an economic standpoint, so 2014, 2013, we used to get newer certifications, being trying to be ahead of the curve as a company, but we were not rewarded in the same way. So we are a generational business, we are a family run 100%. So I used to tell dad that we need to get this new accreditation, this is what it is. He's like, okay, what are you going to sell the product for? Are you going to get 2 cents more? So now this was the question that I always had no answer. But demonstrating the sustainability aspect in the industry is seeing the rewards and opening the doors. So when you go and say we are, as a company, 100% of our water is recycled and put back into our own compound and nothing is let out, the meeting is very different when you go to a US retailer or a European retailer. When you go and say, most of my energy is from solar, again, it's a different thing. So earlier, it didn't matter. Now it's to a point where you have a better audience, people are recognizing you, and there's a slight premium to it. But going into the future, I believe the economic effect is also going to be there. And some of the initiatives that we are seeing on the farming sector, aquaculture is is the backbone of the seafood industry. We have fisheries, which is the wild caught where we catch from the ocean, and then aquaculture is inland fisheries. So their water treatment is still not completely done in the context of India. So you're raising the animal in the water and letting it out to the drain. So that is the next policy framework which we are telling the government, because of a sustainability aspect is nothing but it's directly proportional to the economics. Right now, if you're talking about a generational business, so the water is going out and coming back into the system, which means it will overproduce in the next crop or next 5 years. So from a policy standpoint, we are saying mandate that all the aquaculture water has to be treated before it is let out. Right now, we don't have a policy on that or a mandatory requirement, so as to say. So now in the aquaculture, water is the first thing, and energy, we have paddles which generate oxygen. So there's no policy matter which mandates that, okay, 30% has to come from solar, or so it's still the grid where you're taking the power from. And a lot of energy guzzlers, and like agriculture, our state governments give a big subsidy in terms of the power requirements. So we are telling the government, in fact, yesterday's forum also we had mentioned that why don't you incentivize solar-based panels where you don't have a lot of requirement from the grid per se. So just to summarize, these are some of the examples which are given. So just to summarize, what I would like to share is that the impact of sustainability is on the economics also in a big way, and we are starting to see that it's no longer about quote unquote the fancy word, or we are a sustainable company, or we are doing the right things. It's the need of the hour, and it's being mandated by the European and the US retailers primarily. And Indian retailers and all, we're still a long way off, I would say.
I had a follow-up question, but first, let's hear from Professor. He's exploring the social inclusion and also fintech. Wait.
Glad to be here and to hear about the initiatives happening at Nekkanti Seafoods. So I mainly work in social inclusion space. That's the mandate I have. But first thing I would like to discuss is how we can connect sustainability with growth. For example, recently, a couple of days ago, we got our quarterly GDP growth rates. All right, so it's about 7.7%. But when you talk about 7.7%, that number, let's assume India is growing over the last 5 years, 6 years at 7%. Then I think from the definition of the government, we are highly sustainable growth economy. But I think that has got a huge caveat in terms of climate sustainable or green economy sustainable. For example, if I sell my bed that I use at home, that contributes my income growth. But the problem is I don't have a bed to sleep at home, right? So, but when we account, we mainly account in terms of whether I sold my bed or not. In other words, the way we account in terms of government accounting for GDP is, how much income, like for example, Nekkanti every year is generating income. So that's the only matter of care for the government in terms of monetary accounting. But when we talk about sustainability of green economy, the accounting, what we need is more about a biophysical account. So what's happening to the green economy? What depletions are happening for water, for example, when seafood industry is thriving, right? So what's happening for our energy uses when data centers are coming up in India? So I think, the whole policy needs a paradigm shift in terms of trying to understand how do we account for growth? Is it the current way we do it, or is it much more sustainable way, which is more about biophysical accounting that we consider while accounting? Because when I do the biophysical accounting, then I think my net growth might be negative for the economy. So what government has to really focus on is how we are growing as an economy, how we are reaching our vision 2047, and for example, how we can achieve the growth with rewards as well. For example, I do a lot of work with social inclusion elements, run a lot of pilots. One pilot connected to this topic right now is soil. So the dissolved carbon in the soil is a big parameter for green economy or biophysical accounting part. So how much carbon is under the soil? Because all the carbon is technically under the soil. We try to take it out to fossil fuels or through agriculture, tilling activities, etc. All the carbon gets released onto the air. But now, if farmers, we devised, we created a small IoT devices, affordable to farmers, where they can measure their own dissolved organic carbon to create a carbon market for them in terms of carbon pricing, carbon policy for the economy, right? So now let's assume that they gain carbon credits. So there is a reward for them to, make it much more sustainable or increase biophysical accounting positive impact to the economy. So that the net is still positive in terms of economic growth, even if I take a monetary accounting perspective, in addition to biophysical accounting. So that's something we need to think in terms of inclusive. How can we make it climate-friendly agriculture? So we know that if there is more dissolved, for having more dissolved carbon, I think your agricultural practice should be in line with climate-friendly practices. For example, if you grow a lot of rice, then I think you have to use a lot of resources. If I grow more millets, I use less resources, natural resources. So, but millets are climate friendly, but how can I incentivize a farmer to grow more millets if there is a carbon credit market connected to it? So if farmers can declare that, hey, I'm growing millets, I have more dissolved carbon in the soil, and I can show you with a standard measurement, then I think, they can gain carbon credits, and we encourage them to grow more, millets, which are much more climate friendly. So I think, at the policy level, one thing I really stress for the government or public policy is to think about looking at economic growth rate in a different way altogether. So how do we account for growth is so important for sustainability. And the second aspect is how can we make it as part of a structural change in the policy where inclusion, can lead to more climate-friendly practices by farmers and by everyone in the society. Right? So we're doing the same thing for water. We did a lot of pilots for water now. So I think these are some examples on how we can go towards a public policy to be much more inclusive in terms of sustainability.
Thank you so much, Professor. Much deeper question that you've asked about the social inclusion. Thanks so much. I have a follow-up question, one which is directed to you, and one question any of you can take. So, when you are in industry, you can see that the AI, because any discussion is without AI is not at all possible nowadays. And what I know about seafood industry is not a high-tech intensive industry. It means your dependency on the people is extremely high. We have to see the two sides of the coin, how AI can replace the human or how AI can bring the sustainability. Just throw some light on that.
I think, as you rightly said, it's a very human intensive industry. So, but AI is making change very rapidly. So even before the buzz in the last 1 year has come in. So just to give an example, grading used to happen very manually in our industry. The shrimp comes into the factory. What we mean by grading is this is like the largest shrimp, this is the medium, this is the small. So people are just going hand by hand, looking at the shrimp and then grading the process. Now, in the last 3 years, there's a US company which has come in with a vision technology. It's a conveyor system. So which the shrimp goes through it. Based on the vision, they take photographs. Every 30 seconds, almost 60 photographs are taken. Based on that, it keeps pushing into the different bins. Now, the cost of the machine is over $1 million. Each factory, which is a medium factory, will need at least 2 machines of those. So it's a trade-off between the manual labor cost versus the AI or the hardware and the software of it. That is one point, and we are all moving towards that. So right now we have moved from manual grading to vision grading 100% as a company. But India has at least another 95% which has to move in there, because it's a trade-off between the initial capex and now we're talking about AI. Everybody is saying AI costs are very high, and this is a prime example of this. The second example, which I can say in here, why AI cannot replace at the moment, it could eventually come. So very quickly, just to give you an example, the shrimp, you have the head and the body part. So when you take out the head, what we say is the yield is you take 10 grams of shrimp, and then you take out the head part is 4 grams. So 60% is your yield, 6 grams is the shrimp. So if you take another 1 gram out, goes into the head by the loose manual function or something. So the cost here is 1.5 rupees, because that's our residual value when the extra gram is attached to the shrimp head, versus staying on the meat is 400 plus rupees. So that's the manual efficiency is much higher to a machine or AI here. There are AI machines which have already come, which can separate both, but the difference is 1 gram. So there's no way, there's no economic way at this moment AI can replace that process. So that's why it's very manually intensive. It's just not about the investment cost, it is about the running cost. So the 1 gram is going off in the machine onto the 1.5 rupees, where compared to the 400. So farming is making a lot of progress in the last few years. Aquaculture, because it's very, very primitive in India per se. So now we have IoT devices. We have even in the efficiency of power, there's monitoring devices which have come in. So they're making a lot of progress, new age companies coming in, startups coming in, which are intervening on the AI process, taking out a lot of the manual stuff. So very quickly on the farming side, till now, some of the videos that you see, even yesterday's conference in the video, you see a small pontoon, like a small boat, and the guy is spraying all the feed to the shrimp and the fish. So, which is very, very manual and not efficient, because he can overfeed or underfeed. Now, there are IoT machines, depending on the noise that the shrimp is making, dispersing feed. These are all in the developmental phase. There are machines, there's a person from Elur who has started a company called Auto Feeders, basically the auto feeding to the shrimp. So it's a startup over 6-7 years ago, which was acquired by a European company. I tell a lot of my colleagues that we have not realized, it's such a shame that we have not developed the technology. And so it was bought by a European company and widely adopted in Ecuador right now, which is our biggest competition. So this is some of the, and he's done a fantastic job. It's just from a farmer background, developing the needs of the actual farmer.
Thank you so much. So I thank you. Why? Because you talk about both sides. One side, the cost is less. Yes, it is indeed in the grading helping you, the marginal cost what you're calculating. But the other side, the cost is very huge, where you have very less profit, which is actually connected to the question which I'm actually referring to you, which Madam says is the cost parity. Now, what we are seeing, because we're talking about the just transition, and this transition is on the, which I told yesterday, on the cusp of two big changes. One is the oil supply, and second is the AI boom. Now, that is increasing the demand for the electricity huge, because every organization with a low computing cost is ready to adopt the AI. Then the cost parity is going to be questioned extremely when we're talking about the marginal people, those who need the power. So just this is thrown to both, and then we'll open to flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
A very simple way of looking at it is, why are we surrounded by a lot of unsustainable products? Why? Are we surrounded by unsustainable products? Yes. When we know all the benefits and attributes of sustainable products, still in the world we are surrounded by unsustainable products. The thing is, as of now, it costs less to produce an unsustainable product with a sustainable product, other things remaining unchanged. Another way is, if you study the Nike shoe, the entire value chain of the shoe is sustainable. End-to-end, third-party production centers, everything is totally 100% sustainable. The question here is, who is paying for the sustainability of Nike shoe? Today, the customer is made to pay the sustainability of the Nike shoe. In order for the world to truly adopt sustainability in a real sense of life, which is required for the net zero transition, the stakeholders, everyone has to share the burden of sustainability. Which means what? Are the shareholders willing to accept 0.5%, let's say, less return on investment if the company is totally sustainable? Are the employees willing to forego some bit of their salary because they are working for a 100% green and clean enterprise? The burden of sustainability has to be shared across the value chain for this concept to have the mass adoption which is needed in order for it to capture global imagination and become a way of life.
Add to clarification because of the question. You're right, ma'am, but the question is lying here. I am buying Nike shoes, but the farmer who is there in his seafood aquaculture is not buying. But the increase in the electricity demand has increased the marginal cost of him affording that electricity for every reason, be it a sustainability, be it air, anything. I'm just bringing clarification to you, sir, please.
No, I think that's where public policy comes. So the paradox here is that you really need AI. Say, for example, if government wants to implement biophysical accounting, because you need all the LiDAR cameras to capture the whole physical parts of India and see that they're increasing, decreasing. Humanly it's not possible. So you need an AI, for sure, to be more accurate for getting the right sustainable growth rates for India. At the same time, AI, as you said, data centers consumes huge electricity as part of that. And I think that's why public policy kicks in to understand what are the costs and what the benefits of AI for the economy and how we can make AI sustainable itself. For example, if the data center is coming in Vizag, 10 billion investment by Google, are we going to provide energy to the hydrogen plant that is coming up in Vizag as well? So and is hydrogen plant sustainable? So I think you need a broader policy for someone to outlay the benefits are more compared to the cost, and I think all that needs a better policy.
Thank you. So now the floor is open. We'll take the question from there, and you can also indicate to whom it is asked. Bharat?
I think I'm loud enough. Yes,
but then you have to switch back and forth.
Okay. Yeah, the question is to Venkat, Monica, and Vijay. You can also add on the academic side. In the particularly in the US and also in Canada, coming from Europe, in the farming sector, the right to repair laws, for example, for this very expensive equipment, it's now being legalized into the framework. So the question is, one is sustainability, the other one is AI, and so on. You talked about automation. If you compare, if you compare the amount of automation that you have and so on and so forth, is repairing would add to sustainability, right? If you can repair it, it would add to sustainability. Could you speak to how much of the current infrastructure, equipment, machinery is repairable in that sense, and increasing, and when you compare to the US peers or European peers, particularly on the machinery part, including solar panels and so on.
I can speak in a limited way. I think the model changed from repair to use and throw in the last few years. We saw that. For example, the AC technology changed to inverter ACs because they were marketed as more energy efficient. But in my own personal experience, I found them to be non-repairable beyond a certain point. So I think the world today is flooded by unsustainable products more, and the norm has become less towards repair. And I'm with you when I would like to have more of those products which are repairable, extending the useful life of the product and having an end of life responsibility towards scrapping. That would be my limit.
I think from our industry, repair versus replacement is about change of technology. What was built continues to work for us. And just as a businessman, you want to repair rather than replace. So it's a pure economic thing. But just adding further onto it, the industry, let's say our iPhones, they don't conk off, but they are made to be replaced. So in terms of the technology adoption or the next, every year they launch a new iPhone for a reason that they want to kind of get it out. And the economy, as ma'am was mentioning on the air conditioning or the TVs, earlier our TVs used to last 15, 20 years versus like 5, 6 years. So I think it's just more about replacement value than repairs is how it's manufactured to be, I guess.
So my 2 cents on this, we are nowhere close. I think if I remember right, we're aiming for 300 gigawatts renewable energy source by 2030, and we are nowhere close to that. And government is trying to encourage banks to come out with green bonds and all those things so that people can invest more on renewables at scale. I think we are nowhere close to that. I think bonds are not successful. One issue is all stakeholders have to participate, even though the returns are less. I think that's still a big issue, more in India, because awareness is not there. And there is no mandate from in terms of public policy that if I'm setting up a data center, and what percentage should go for green energy, usage, consumption. So I think these are not there. And even if there is a mandate like that, there are no sources where they can get. So there is no ecosystem right now, like in Europe, for example. So I think it's a big task ahead.
Any other? Yeah. It's near the back.
Yeah, so my question is mainly about seafood production. So with this increase in temperatures and global warming, we have a clear danger for agriculture. So what are the challenges for seafood? And you mentioned a goal plan for 2035. So what are the challenges to reach that with the current scenario, to reach that particular plan or target?
No, what you mentioned is, I think in your question, the first answer was the climate. So the El Nino effect, which in last 2 months we've just been talking about, and there's expected to be a big shortage is the prediction because of the climate, the El Nino effect, especially in the Ecuador region globally. So the two main challenges which are not in our control is one is weather, which is downstream as well. We require a lot of fish meal to feed the shrimp and fish. Fish meal is nothing but all the fish waste, which is kind of used in the feed, high protein, as one of the ingredients combined with a lot of others. So fish meal production is going down drastically because of the El Nino effect. So that's one of the major challenges that we're going to face. The other is the viruses which are very active, like our COVID in humans. So we have viruses which we have overcome, like our cold influenza and all. So shrimp also, it's the same. It's waterborne viruses. So something which comes up new, which kind of attacks, and every 10 years or 8 years. Now, is there a lot of research or AI which predicts what is the next virus and all? Yes, there are funds being allocated from the different places, from the industry, from the research organizations, to identify these kind of things. But virus and climate are the two major challenges. So by and large, compared to the last 20 years to now, what has changed, or what are the mitigations that we have taken is overexploitation, bad aquaculture practices. These have all been curtailed because of the norms of the Western countries, which mandate that you have to trace back what is happening. Now you have satellite imagery, which kind of shows you when the pond is ready, when it's harvested. So a lot of those have taken a big overhaul in the last 20 years in terms of how farming is done predominantly, and overfishing as well. So fishing right now, we have a 61-day fishing ban, even in India, mandated fishing ban. No mechanized trawler can go. Only where there's no motor, just a manual boat can go and fish, so that the breeding grounds get better. So world over, these are the changes from a sustainability standpoint which have been mandated. But two things which are not in control are these two. And weather is again God's thing, which we can't do anything. But virus is something a lot of research is happening right now, more so than ever before.
Any? Yeah. First, let's go to the lady at the back, and then we can come to Jonathan.
This question is to Venkat, sir. Sir, what is the future scope of AI in seafood industry?
So as I touched upon a little bit, so there's a lot of scope in terms of AI for the seafood industry, especially in the farming sector. So just to give a perspective, so when we have, so farming, for those of you who don't know how it is, it's a 1 acre pond, 6 feet to 5 feet depth. Typically, that's like the thumb rule. And the water is completely opaque. You don't know, you can't see the animal below. So how active it is, what is it? Is it the only parameter that we see over the years? Even 90% of the farms right now also, very primitive way of saying is, we have something called a check tray. So that's nothing but a small tray where somebody pulls up after the feeding. So you see what is the size of the shrimp, how much it's jumping around, saying that whether it's active or not, and what is the feed left over in the check tray, whether shrimp has eaten. So that is the way that we are doing. But now AI coming in, what are the different aspects which are being tested and coming up is, so there's a sonar sensor which goes and sees how the shrimp are swimming, how active they are. And the shrimp makes a sound like a small growling sound if you have to, when they are hungry, that's when you want to feed. So these are the AI technologies in the farm, and very needed as well, right from the economics, how the FCRs, feed conversion ratios affected. So these are some of the things in terms of AI which are coming in. And at the factory level, it's, as I said, the grading and all, but there's a limited scope which can impact, okay, 1-2% here and there. But the farming is where we need a lot of AI intervention, and that is happening as we speak.
Yeah, so before we move to the next question, I need to bring the cow to the home. Let's not go to the AI for discussion. We have used the AI for the green transition. One of that factor. Okay, so yeah, over to you, Jonathan.
My question is to Mr. Venkat, and both professors can add on. And so waste management is one of the important factor in sustainability. And seafood industry does generate a lot of bio waste. And how do you see this? And how can we use this for a economical like outcome? It will like, generate an economical outcome.
No, I think it's a very valid and important question, which is right for the industry. So if we talk about 25 years ago, so all the waste, the shrimp waste, the shell, head, all of this, when I was young, we never wanted to go to the factory because behind the factory, there were like this big pits which were done, and we were dumping them, and then it's biodegradable, but a lot of smell, like especially if it's raining, it's horrible. So we never enjoyed going to the factory. So now when my kids come to the factory, they enjoy it a lot because there's no smell. So a seafood industry, a seafood factory should not smell like seafood. That's when it's a good factory. So in terms of the wastage, right now, what happens is 100% of our waste is taken. That's the analogy I was saying. It's 1.5 rupees to 2 rupees is what they pay per kilo, taking the waste from us. So it's a big thing. So what they do with the shell waste and all of this is they take chitin extract, which is a medicinal value, and then they crush it and make it a protein for the animal feed. Or so it's 100% used. So there's no wastage in the seafood industry from the plant. And if it's fish, all the fish is mashed up, and that's where we call the fish meal. So there are plants. There's a listed company which just does this fish meal. So right now, it's a very economical thing. Now, as far as the wastage in the farming is concerned, still a lot of work needs to be done. There's a lot of organic waste which comes in the farms. It again goes back to the feed. So we overfeed. The feed goes down onto it's a floating feed, but it kind of settles down onto the farm. So the organic waste and all. There we need to have a good recycling system. So there are no chemicals, there's nothing which cannot be treated, which is mixed in the fish farming or the shrimp farming. So it's just about, we need to get the mandatory thing from the government saying that it has to be treated before it's let out. So I don't think there'll be a economic value to it, but it's more about a sustainability angle that we all have to adopt, and maybe it's in the next few years it'll come up.
Right. Any other question? Okay. Please be seated, no problem.
Thank you. So actually, you have mentioned about one point when you are talking about, you have mentioned about rice and millets. You took an example. So on that example, I have a question. So when we say increase the production of millets, but that would actually push the price down as well, right?
To push the price of millets. I mean,
Yeah.
the supply would go
Yeah,
up.
so farmer wouldn't be for farmers' perspective, even if they get a good green score.
Yeah, that's why now, as long as the market rewards the farmer for dissolving more carbon in the soil, there should be a reward in terms of carbon credits.
Financial reward, you are
Yeah,
asking.
yeah. So then I think that compensates.
Okay.
So that can happen to rice as well. If the production of rice is more, price will come down.
Yeah. So there are other like when for rice and these kind of products, they would use peas and all those things to redo the like soil. But that's not a question. That's
So
just
the
saying.
main thing, when you cultivate rice, you need more water,
Yeah.
more pesticide fertilizers, right? So and you have to till more. So by doing all these things, I think you become not friendly to climate. So you're wasting all the resources, and all the carbon is getting emitted from the soil. But on the other hand, when you grow millets, because they're resistant to climate weather issues, you don't need much water, you don't need fertilizers, you don't need chemicals, and I think and you have more dissolved carbon in the soil that way, and they're healthy as well. Yeah, but on top of that, if there is a vibrant market for carbon credits for farmers, right? So then I think they benefit more because there is an incentive for them to cultivate more millets. Sorry? Yeah. So we need a public policy there. Yeah.
So in China, they reward if the project submitted to a financial institution is totally green project, then the rate at which the lending is available is a preferential rate. Now, unless you have clear-cut incentives built into the system wherein there is promotion of green projects end to end, here in India, whether you submit a green project report or an otherwise report, there's no distinction in terms of rate of interest which would be available for the capital sought. And I see this from straight away from a financial standpoint, considering most businesses would require borrowed capital, you could drive the economy towards sustainability by having those incentives in place.
I'd like to add on to Professor Monica's point, because that's quite relevant, whether it should be a public policy which is national or global. I think that's very important, because China is a good example where they want to become much more sustainable. They want to become green, but at the cost of making the world much more unsustainable. For example, soybean. Soybean is the major consumed food in China. They make all this tofu, etc. And now, because of the incentives, they're not producing soybean in China, and now they want to cultivate the whole soybean in Brazil, and that has eroded a lot of natural resources, and that has caused huge problem in Amazon belt. Now, huge problems of sustainability are there in Brazil purely because of soybean cultivation for China. So, and that's important. Should it be a global policy? So, do you want to make your country, your neighborhood clean, and make the rest of the world a dumping yard? That's a big question we need to ask.
This is something I think European countries and West also does very often.
Yeah.
Like they shift their manufacturing agent to the global south and they
Yeah.
keep a clean economy.
Yeah, that's not sustainable again.
That's not sustainable,
No.
like totally. But China started it like in 1978, if we think like the idea of this idea, like sustainability.
So shifting of these industries to countries where there is less regulation, in technical terms, we call it as carbon leakage.
So, you have any question?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, then we'll.
Actually, it's in continuation with incentivizing sustainability. Like, why can't we just have a policy on like sustainability accounting from the government side? And why can't we just like incentivize that for the companies through like deductions in tax and all? Because from Venkat sir's like initial talk, I understood initially 10 years back they are not motivated. Like even though he was interested, like companies side they are not motivated. But now when they get the recognition and incentives, they are motivated. So why can't we do it at large and force like from force should come from the government side that sustainable accounting should be there and it should be like have a score or something. Based on that, we can give deductions or some kind of incentives.
So, since it is relating to sustainability accounting, right now there are various standards, but there is no uniformity. The world is moving towards that. Every year, the COP, one of the major pillars is unification and, standardization in sustainability accounting. The world achieved the standardization in financial accounting, and that's when, it became the global norm. So as of now, there is no standardization. The world is slowly moving there. There are leading five different standards which are given. But if we talk of India, we have the BRSR report, which is applicable to the top 1,000 companies. For sustainability accounting to become mainstream, it has to be mandatory. And the template has to be fixed, though it can have sector-wise more additions as appendices because there are certain sectors which are more polluting as compared to the other.
Can I? Yeah. My question is to Mr. Venkat. So you talked about freshwater farming and how you can bring in sustainability in that aspect. But you also have a seafood, like seawater kind of, yeah, ocean based. So I'm more curious about to know how we can bring sustainability in that particular aspect.
Sure. So we were overfishing, like India has been overfishing quite a bit. So what we typically call as trawling, Trawling is nothing but the net goes down to the bed of the ocean and trawls everything. So it's just not fishing for the fish and the shrimp or any of the other species, but it's just dragging along all the flora and fauna of the bed of the ocean. So again, it very, very unsustainable practice. So for a lot of years, this was happening. That's how we had seen depletion in the resources in the ocean. Just off the coast of Vizag, so which was one of the biggest fishing harbors, like Cochin and Vizag was number two when we were young in 2000s. So now in the trawlers, none of them do any fishing. So these trawlers are used for ONGC exploration. So it's given on lease. So these are white elephants sitting there. So now in terms of the sustainability aspect, we are a little late. One of the things that the government has mandated is a 61-day holiday, no fishing whatsoever, which is implemented very, very well. It's been 10 years, I guess, a little over 10 years since that has been mandated. And some of the other things which are, they do a dragnet test, make sure that there's nothing there. Although there's not much of fishing which is happening right now, which is all the small mechanized boats and bringing in. It's not very viable. And one of the other things is the diesel costs. Earlier, it was subsidized by almost 60%. Right now, there's zero subsidy. So there's no real incentive. So this is a prime example of the aspect of sustainability where we have not taken care of the resources to regenerate and make sure it's a circular economy continuously year after year. And we are facing the brunt of it. And luckily, the inland fisheries has taken over. So.
Thank you. So if this directly the question is not directly related, I want to give a little direction to this whole discussion. May I, or you want to ask a question? Okay, go ahead.
This is also for Venkat. So it is mostly the seafood industry is more prone to bacteria and viruses risks, and so if and also at many if it is not properly controlled in a good conditions, it could contaminate the produce as well, even at the virus stage or at the handling of the produce stage. And as you are into exports, this may also spread to other countries as well if it is not properly monitored. And this also can cause harm to air, water, or land, as well as human being or the coexistent living beings as well. So how do you control it, or what do you do with the contaminated produce? What mitigation risks you take care of?
Sure. As the processor and exporter, so we have the export license and we are the processor of shrimp or fish, any of these. The complete owners lies with us. So we are the ones who are supposed to test for any banned antibiotics, any banned viruses, any kind of. So we have to take those, and there are different markets for it. So it's a very good question. So for example, Australia. So we see in the news that cricketer's shoes had dirt and he was not allowed and he was fined and all that. So Australia as a nation is an island nation. They're very, very concerned about any new virus coming into the nation. So they have very strict protocols. There's something called white spot virus, which is very common in shrimp in India, which is nothing but like an influenza in human beings of India. So which is something you live by. US doesn't care, Europe doesn't care about any white spot virus. You can send shrimp, you can send any fishery item to that nation. They don't care even if it tests positive for white spot virus, because once you cook, it dies. So there's no, but Australia is very scared that if this comes in, forget the human consumption. If this goes into the land or the water, it can spread into the ecosystem. So the onus lies with the exporters to make sure that what are the norms of that nation, how are you going to curtail it, and if any rejection happens, it's on us. The financial burden is on us. We get delisted there. So it's a very important aspect of the seafood industry.
Yeah, that goes back to their rabbit problem. All right, so I just want to give one, since we are talking about this just transition and the sustainability, two questions to the expert from the academia. One is the climate policies, how they are impacting the disadvantaged section. That's a one aspect. And second, to your idea about the carbon credit, and same in the same length you talk about, it is crossing the boundary. So when it is crossing the boundary at the country level, I'm thinking from the farmer's land to another land. How are you going to monitor the data and the verification of the data that I only own this carbon credit, not her? Let's little bit have your views on that.
Sure. I think that's a very, no, I'll start with the second one. I'll come to the first one after that. So that was the question even I had when I started the project. Then, so one way to solve the problem is better traceability. And we implemented a blockchain enabled ecosystem. So it's a Web3 ecosystem where the whole data transferred through IoT device stays on a data lake, controlled by, managed by a blockchain environment. And incentivization as well can happen directly to the farmer, given it's a decentralized ecosystem. Where I think, that's one side. The other side is, you have to ensure that whatever they're transmitting the data is as per the standard set by standard agencies. Like, there is a US body, there is a Euro body in terms of what is a valid carbon credit. So, and you have to get approvals for all those, from those agencies to, certify that, and whatever the farmer is sending is actually carbon credit. And the second thing is the farmer, in terms of the province, where the sending from is the authentic province. So this is still a pilot. We are tied up with Shell company. The Shell is the partner in this project. For water, we did the same thing, where this is a pilot in collaboration with Finland and Netherlands, where the idea is to measure water quality of each and every water body, and the data is supplied by citizens. So it's called a citizen science, right? So they crowdsourcing. So they are incentivized through this blockchain Web3 ecosystem by issuing some tokens where they can cash the tokens later. So I think still I think technology is not there where I think things are foolproof at the moment, but they're coming up. Yeah. So that's the first one. The second one, I think if farmers are at the worst end, with the climate change, because on one side, more unpredictability in terms of their output. At the same time, I think there is no policy that can protect them. If there is for example, insurance could be one big. So insurance did not take off because again, technology is not there. Where right now, for example, take something like the crop insurance scheme of the government. So the way they calculate whether you can claim or not is not in favor of the farmers. That's why you see that many farmers do not subscribe to the insurance policy. So because they, for government's sake, they lack technology where technology can pinpoint and say whether a given farmer is affected by or not. So they go as per some broad thumb rules. So area-wise, like this area got affected. So let's assume you're as per the government rule, you're in the unaffected area, but got affected, you're not covered. So there is a trust problem from the farmers as well, I think, to subscribe, because they cannot claim. A lot of claims cannot happen through this policy. So I think insurance industry also has to help the farmers in a big way. Otherwise, I think they're at a big problem. Yeah.
I would like to talk about the first one in terms of the whole idea of sustainability transitions, greatly now referred to as just transition. We have the Paris Agreement talking about the common but differentiated responsibility, wherein it is formally acknowledged that the developed countries those who have been historically the larger pollutants, they have greater responsibility. While climate action is a global phenomenon, the responsibilities are differentiated. And we have several other public policy instruments which are talking about those at the bottom of the pyramid who are unable to protect themselves, and yet they are severely impacted by sustainability transitions in the sense of economic disruption to their livelihoods. We have the carbon border adjustment mechanism. We have several such policy instruments bifurcated between developed and the developing world.
Thank you, ma'am. If no more question from the audience, then it is not like I want to conclude. I'll just try to summarize even in the beginning what you actually questioned, that, how you measure the growth in GDP growth. I think we need to move forward from whatever the standard, or be it the green project with the standardization, or in terms of what Mr. Nekkanti also talked about from the sustainable point of view, how you essentially use the water. What I want to say here, the discussion never leads to conclusion. I will leave with one reference of, the the person who is known for, the theory of justice, John Rawls, and then the book written by Amartya Sen on the idea of justice was a small story that is actually told. The three kids are playing in the jungle, and they spot a fluid in the jungle. Now, the person who spotted first, he said, "Look, I deserve this fluid because I have spotted first." The second person says, "Look, I'm extremely poor. I need this flute. I can sell it in the market and I can make some money so that I can feed myself." And the third kid said, "No, I actually flute this. I play this flute the best in this village. I value this flute more than anybody else." Now that's something, the dilemma where, the just and fair is always been, whether the sustainability is justice or something else. We'll keep this thing for, further open of the discussion, but I thank all my panelists for your time, and I invite Professor Ravi Vatrapu, my co-conference chair, to please felicitate each of our panelists. First, from Professor Monica Singhania. I'll just make a space here so that you can go. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone in the audience. Now we can join for lunch, and then the third plenary session will be after the lunch, 2 o'clock. Thank you, Professor. Yeah, yes, please. నేను వెళ్తున్నాను బ్యాగ్ బాక్స్ పెట్టలేము తొందరగా. Thank you so much.